industry global organizations. She has led large-scale organizational transformations and is a specialist in integration, change management, organizational capability enhancement, and talent management. In her prior roles, Ms. Narayan has led HR for AkzoNobel in South Asia and held leadership roles at GSK, GE, and UNICEF before joining Google India as the market HR leader. Ma'am, we are delighted to have you back on campus and look forward to gaining value from your rich experience. I now invite you on stage and request you to address the waiting audience.
Thank you so much, Saksham. And thank you, Professor Raman. It's a pleasure to be back. Hi, everyone. This is a very unusual format, and I should say this has started becoming less unusual now at the end of this year. Once again, I am Preeti Narayan. I'm the Market HR Lead for Google India, and it is such a pleasure to be here at the HR Conclave. I recall more than 2 decades ago, I was on this campus and I was emceeing these HR conclaves. And those are some of my fondest memories of when I was at SIBM Pune in the earlier campus. Thank you again for inviting me, and this is a wonderful, I go back to wonderful memories. In 2020, if there's one term that we have heard more than COVID-19 or pandemic, it is mental health. But the question that remains in front of us is, what is mental health? Mental health includes emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It also incorporates a wide range of issues from clinically diagnosed mental disorders to substance abuse and addiction. If I look at statistics, globally around 800,000 people die by suicide every year. And I will wait for that number to sink in. It's 800,000 people every year. This means one death every 40 seconds. If I look at the time, we started this session 7 minutes ago, and I think most of us can do the maths around the number of suicides that may have happened even as we speak. And that is the enormity of the problem that we face. Reports also show that 264 million people of all ages suffer from depression. Here in India, according to the World Health Organization, at least 57 million people are depressed, the highest in the world. Despite these hair-raising statistics, there is still a substantial taboo when discussing mental health. And hence, I chose this topic for today's keynote, because I think this topic needs to be out in the open and we need to talk about it, rather than suffering in silence. This year, as we know, the world is grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic, which has impacted the mental health and well-being of billions of people. The levels of anxiety, fear, isolation, social distancing, and emotional distress that is associated with the virus have become widespread as the world struggles to bring COVID-19 under control. And to each of us, this is a different meaning. Some of us may be fearful of the virus itself. Others may be fearful of the impact the situation will have. For instance, many of you students would be, are taking classes from home. The teaching faculty is teaching in a very unusual circumstances. Those waiting for placements may be fearful of the placement situation in this. Some may be worried about the health and well-being of their near and dear ones. Each of us at any given point in time, and the situation may keep changing, will experience different levels of anxiety. The World Health Organization has also reported that 1 in every 7 individuals suffers from some sort of mental health issues in India. Again, coming back to our session, if there are 700 people across different platforms listening into this session, there would be at least 100 of us who are suffering from some form of mental health issue. Unfortunately, despite this, there's such a big taboo. Therefore, addressing the lack of awareness, accessibility, and infrastructure associated with mental health is the need of the hour. To me, and to many mental health professionals, more than the challenge of the mental health is the challenge of the taboo associated with it. In most cultures, acknowledging mental health issues such as depression are strongly associated with weakness or some other personality flaw. I'm sure many of us have also heard of this around us. I personally think people who acknowledge a problem with mental health, whether their own or those around them, are actually the bravest. It's not a personality weakness at all. But as we go forward, I would like us to go through a Menti poll just to see what is our awareness of this issue. So, Saksham, can I ask you to present the Menti poll for all of us?
Sure, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is the screen visible?
Yes, it is visible to me. We'll just give everybody a few minutes. So I think most of you would be aware of menti.com. I would request you to log on to www.menti.com on whatever gadget you're using, be it your phone or your laptop. And when you go there, you'll be asked to enter a code. So enter the code 1360668. That's really simple. Go to menti.com and enter the code, which is on the screen in front of you, 1360668. And with this, we will move on to the next slide. And what I would like you to do is, each of you, based on your understanding and experience, identify these statements and answer which of these do you think are truths. So there are some 8 questions in front of you. Whichever one you feel are truth, there is, that's based on your understanding. Please do respond to that. We'll give everybody a few minutes to respond. Once again, for those who are still joining us, log on to menti.com and use the code at the top of the screen. Yeah, we are seeing responses coming in. Okay, we'll just give it another few seconds. Give it another few seconds as I see the number of people participating in the survey increasing. Okay, so let's take a look at the statements. Which of these are truths? Okay, some more people are joining in, so we'll just... Which of these are truth? Mental health illness is less prevalent than physical illness. And I think around 50% people feel that it's a myth and it's as prevalent as physical illness. Mentally ill people are illogical, emotional, and cry a lot. Some people think that's the truth. One can easily spot a mentally ill person. Again, there is a percentage of people who believe that this is the truth. You don't need a therapist if you have a strong circle of friends and family, and I'll call this out as one of the biggest myths around surrounding mental health. The role of a professional cannot be undone. So you do need, even if you have a strong circle of friends and family, a therapist is absolutely needed. These are not statements that I have made up. These have been prepared by a list of experts who understand this, who are medically qualified to understand this and understand this subject. Mental illness can be cured through exercise and yoga, and I can see a large number of people think that the statement is true. So I'll just say that yes, definitely exercise and yoga can help alleviate the situation, but it cannot be cured through exercise and yoga. And I'll come after this Menti poll, we'll come to some exercise and we'll realize why it needs therapy to be cured. Mentally ill people are usually not fit to work. Now, this is one of the biggest myths surrounding mental health, and that's why there's such a taboo and people don't want to talk, because there's fear that the things in your life that are working actually will become redundant because people will think you're not fit. And I can see that some of us do believe. And you're not alone. I mean, I do want to say that those of you who have answered this as a truth should know that you're not alone. This is exactly the reason why we want to speak about this topic, increase awareness that there is mental illness around us, and there are sometimes people who are high performers, leaders who have faced it. And in recent times, we have seen many celebrities and leaders coming out and speaking about their mental health issues, and they are absolutely fit to work too. There may be times when you take some time off, which is true for any health issues, but it doesn't make them unfit essentially for work. Mental health related medicines are always habit forming. Now, this statement again is not true. Not all medicines are habit forming, and if you're under the treatment of a professional, a certified, psychiatrist, then not all medicines need to be taken all your life. Not all of them are habit forming, and going for therapy is a luxury. For those who are suffering from mental health issues, therapy is not a luxury but a necessity. So I just want us to pause for a minute, look at the screen, and realize that many of us have thought some of these statements are true, some more than the others. Actually, all of them are myths. None of these statements are really, really true. And that's the degree of lack of awareness of mental health, and hence talking about it, whether in forums like these or in other sessions, is very, very important. Action, could we move to the next question, please? Now, what we want you to do is, this is an anonymous poll, so there is no question of anybody, seeing your answers and who's responded. You have these options on the screen in front of you. Now, chances are some of us may have experienced more than one of these, but in the last few months, maybe since the beginning of this year or since the beginning of this pandemic, if you've experienced any of these, and if you've experienced more than one, just select one which is more prevalent to you. And of course, if you've been lucky enough not to experience any of them, then please, there's an option of none of the above too. I'm just going to give it a few minutes to be all. And again, there are no right or wrong answers. Give it a few more seconds. As I look at this, I realize that there's only a very small percentage of people who are participating in this survey who have been fortunate not to experience any of these very significant causes for mental health challenges in the last year. The pandemic has only increased our susceptibility to mental health issues, and this very short survey from a small sample is just a witness of that. You're not alone. If you have experienced financial insecurity or job loss, health in the middle of a pandemic, of course, health either yourself or those of those loved by you, failed relationship. The pressure of the pandemic is so much that there are increasing number of those situations also. Harassment, a situation of harassment is always very, very overwhelming, and if whoever this is, I would urge you to take support. If you're not, reach out to people you can speak with. Any trauma can lead to post-traumatic stress syndrome. Feeling overwhelmed, believe me, whoever you are, you're not alone. This feeling has happened with me also. There have been times when I've been like, oh my god, when is this going to end? Loneliness, I think, just being in the lockdown, not meeting people, not going out to your friends, living the life that we know, all of it are extremely overwhelming situations. And I would just say that this just shows that 95% of those participating in this survey are actually susceptible to mental health issues and should probably seek support. Having said that, I am almost as certain that most people have not sought that support because of the taboo associated with it. and that's why it is important to talk about it, to share vulnerability, to reach out to not just one another but also to professionals. And yeah, I can still see people participating in this. I can see that this has touched a chord. Thank you, Saksham. As we go forward, I would like to give an example. Think of it this uh, the output of the survey clearly shows that there is a lot of myths surrounding mental health. The output of the second question also shows that most of us have experienced some very, very significant episode in the last 1 year, which makes all of us, each one of us, more susceptible to a mental health issue. And now think of it this way. I'll shift gears. I'm sure there are many who are listening in who like to run, who are marathon runners. Now, supposing I have broken my leg, right? I broke it because of trauma. I was running and I fell and something happened and a bus hit me or something. And now there is a big swelling on my heel. And because I'm a marathon runner, everyone around me expects me to run every single day because that's what I've done all my life. That's my way of being. I also expect myself to run. So I keep pushing myself. And those closest to me will tell me, be strong. What's a little bit of pain? Keep running. You will forget about the pain. You see, the marathon is so important to you. Now I may keep running, and in the end, the swelling becomes a crack, and then finally, my foot may be rendered useless or require a much, much longer treatment and a lot of pain. Now I'm sure this seems ridiculous to all of you. After all, who would expect you to run on a severely injured foot? Now you draw the same example to emotional trauma or depression. These are not often seen as real problems, and that's where the actual problem begins. An emotional trauma or depression is not seen as a real problem in many, many instances. For instance, if I go back to the mentee and I look at the situations that people shared through the poll, often people would have been told, that's okay, this is happening all around us, you're strong, grow past it. And people suffering from these may maintain a poker face. They may hide behind smiling faces, do their regular tasks, not seeking support for fear of judgment and social ostracization. And again, I will recall all the statistics we quoted earlier, that 1 out of 7 of us suffer from some form of mental health issues. Recognizing all of these and the importance of mental health, especially in the time of pandemic, we at Google have recognized how the mental health can impact the well-being of our employees. The pandemic has especially created a wide variety of situations that were earlier unforeseeable for many of us. And to us, mental health is such an important topic, and as it is for many other employers also, which includes Google, we are thinking beyond benefits to ensure that all employees have the support they need to take care of their mental health and well-being. That is why at Google we work hard to ensure that our employees are provided with, or we call our employees Googlers actually, they have the right resources, tools, policies to navigate this unique crisis. One of the programs I want to talk about is called the Blue Dot Program. Now, it is actually a peer-to-peer mental health community where we have Blue Dot listeners. These are employees who volunteer their time to provide peer support and listening sessions for other employees who want to talk about their problems. The topic and how much you disclose is up to you. The goal is to reduce the stigma around mental health, fostering a more open and connected Google. Fostering a safe space can make a difference to all your employees too. To support our colleagues, friends, and family members, I would like to share a few more ways managers of the future can do to support an open environment where people can discuss mental health. Now, one of the first tips is managers should not be afraid to show vulnerability. When we show vulnerability, we create a situation of psychological safety. And if you look back in our lives, the places where we felt most comfortable sharing have been those situations, whether it's within family members, friends, teachers, or our professional colleagues, with those who have opened up and shared vulnerability themselves. And one silver lining of the pandemic is that it normalizes mental health challenges. Almost each one of us has experienced some level of discomfort. And again, the mentee poll has kind of also shown that most of us have experienced something or the other. Being honest about your own mental health struggles as a leader opens the door for employees to feel comfortable talking with you about mental health challenges of their own. For example, at Google, we have leaders who openly shared that they will be taking time off to take care of their mental well-being. We actually have people, saying this openly in meetings that next week I'm not available because I'm taking a well-being break, and we all talk about it. Secondly, as a leader, what we can do is also model healthy behavior. You don't just have to say you support mental health. Model it so that your team members feel that they can also prioritize self-care and set boundaries. More often than not, managers are so focused on their team's well-being and on getting work done that they forget to take care of themselves. In flights, and I quote this example in many times when I speak with people, they always say that wear your oxygen mask first yourself. Your air hostess, and since we all haven't traveled in a long time, will say, "Yatri, कृपया oxygen mask पहले खुद पे लगाएं." So it's important to take care of yourselves. And then share that you're taking a walk in the middle of the day, having a therapy appointment, or prioritizing a staycation. And you will be switching off your emails so that you don't burn out. I have myself put in a block in my calendar on some days where I say that no meeting. I don't want to do anything at this point in time. And that's okay. One way we are practicing this at Google is also to encourage team managers to have no meeting weeks for their teams. So there will be a week where there will be no team meetings. These weeks essentially are those where there are no meetings scheduled. Now this gives Googlers space to focus on independent work. And of course, exceptions may be made. I mean, there might be teams that have hard-hitting deadlines or supporting critical infrastructure, and the team leads are encouraged to move or reschedule no meeting week to a time that works best for the team. Thirdly, building a culture of connect to check-ins. Now, again, due to the social distancing, the new term which none of us had heard of till last year, we have maybe stopped having those informal check-ins. So it's important to intentionally check in with each other, with your direct reports on a regular basis. And I cannot emphasize this enough, it is more critical than ever. It was important earlier too, but often it was underutilized in pre-pandemic days. Now, with so many people working from home, it can be even harder to notice the signs that someone is struggling. And I'm sure many of you all are thinking this. These are all very simple things, and that's exactly the thing. Few simple steps really help in bringing out the best in ourselves and also ensuring that we take care of those around us. So when you're checking in with people, you can go beyond a simple "How are you?" but ask some specific questions about what supports would be helpful. And wait for the full answer. Listening in is really important, and encourage with questions and concerns. The fourth one I would say is offer flexibility and be inclusive. Expect that the situation, your team's needs, and your own needs will continue to change. For a minute, if we pause here and we look back at the year, I think the situation for each one of us changed and our own mental makeup in that situation changed. Hence, the perspective keeps changing with time. So check in regularly, particularly if there's any transition points. You can help problem solve any issues that come up only if you know what's happening. Those conversations also give you an opportunity to reiterate norms and practices that support mental health. And I'll give an example. Our CEO, Sundar Pichai, acknowledged that many Googlers have been running hard non-stop and may be experiencing burnout. And to ensure that Googlers are taking time to prioritize their well-being, Googlers were given 2 official global days off to take care of themselves. And finally, look at ways at this time to update policies, practices, especially during this time of uncertainty, to reduce stress for everyone. Be as generous and flexible as possible in updating policies and practices. Another example is schools closed. People's parental responsibilities skyrocketed overnight. Most daycares shut. People's support systems went for a toss. At that point, many Googlers used various internal channels to voice their experiences and concern. We as a company acted very quickly and responded to Googlers' carers' responsibilities by offering a total of 14 paid weeks of carers' leave, which they can use flexibly, whether it's for their family members or children. So that's 14 weeks of paid leave over and above the rest of the actual holidays, etc., that anyway existed. Now, we all need to take care of our mental health, just as we do for our physical health. So, whether Googlers need access to therapy, build resilience, or learn how to manage stress, we provide the tools and resources to use it when they need it. One example is our employee assistance programs, which is a confidential service for all Googlers and their dependents to receive 24 by 7 counseling over the phone. Before the pandemic, they could see counselors in the community and in some on site locations, but now it's become a counseling service over phone. These initiatives go a long way to ensure our employees are well supported and ultimately be able to bring their full selves to work. And I hope that these examples and tips inspire all of us as HR professionals and leaders, future and present, to prioritize the well being of our employees through this unique crisis and as a way forward. With that, thank you again for having me, and I look forward to the rest of the conference. Saksham, I'm open to questions now.
Hi, ma'am. Will be so. Can you click on the questions icon? You'll start seeing the questions. So the first question is from Nitin Saurabh, who asks, "How has been the acceptance and response of the collective well-being program? How has been its efficacy at allaying mental wellness and productivity-related woes?"
So, thank you so much, Nitin, for the question. So at Google, the usage of these programs during the pandemic have increased. We've had most of these programs, whether it's Blue Dot or whether it is the Employee Assistance Program, like I mentioned, they were in existence earlier. But in many parts of the company, we've seen that the usage has increased. That is not to say that we don't have more distance to cover. We definitely have a lot of coverage to do, but we are looking at increasing support and always listening into our employees to see if more needs to be done. And some of the welcome initiatives that have been taken are the global days off, the no meeting weeks. Those have been extremely have been welcomed very well by the employees. Thank you.
Okay, there was someone who's trying to ask a question, but I think they entered the yes. So the second question is from Amol Kondenia, who asks, "The pandemic has changed the very fabric of work life and personal life. The work from home scenario has burdened women in a more adverse manner than men. How can companies look to ease the way of working for women in work from home scenarios?"
Thank you, Amok. That's a very, very good question. In fact, there's a lot of statistics to show that women are actually worst impacted by the pandemic and this whole work from home scenario because of the social fabric where a lot of the work at home actually rests on the women. So, women are traditionally required to do more, carry more of the burden of the housework as well as the work that is being done that has to be anyway done from a work perspective. I think all the support tools that have been given, like carer leads, like employee assistance program, all of them work towards very actively towards supporting people with varying needs, men or women. And we also have other programs that I have not brought about because they are more from a diversity focus. We have something called Stronger Together in India, which is about speed mentoring for women, which is about under situations, and the mentoring support can be for multiple things, not just about the work from home scenario, but leaders, women leaders can connect with other women leaders to gain advice and support on specific situations they are facing. But it's a very valid point and one that I'm very glad to see that younger professionals like yourself are asking this, because asking the right questions often gets us to the right answers. Thank you.
Moving on, uh, Naman Modi asks, "The current change seems to be long term and partially permanent. How is HR planning to tackle this in the long run, looking at the degrading fine line between work and personal life?
Thank you, Naman. Another very, very good question. I think, like I said during when I was speaking, that the questions on it's a good time to relook at your policies and be open and look at it from that lens and how you can support your employees. An employee who's feeling well taken care of, well looked after, and more comfortable about their personal situation is the productivity of such an employee is definitely going to be much more much more than others. So I think understanding that this situation can actually impact the productivity of the organization is the first step. Relooking at your policies to be generous, and then working on the culture. And culture changes at the top. So setting example at the top about drawing fine boundaries between your work time and your personal time, making sure that you talk about it, and showing vulnerability to increase psychological safety, I think are things that as leaders of the organization we do.
Also requesting the attendees to upvote a question in case someone's already asked what you wanted to ask. That way, like, we'll be able to take up the most frequently asked questions first. On that note, Yash Agarwal asks, quite often we see recruiters averse to hiring candidates who might have had a past experience of mental ailments or may be going through the same. How can the HR address this dichotomy?
Yash, thank you. Again, a very, very good question. I think the exact way that we are doing right now is talking about mental health and talking about it as a and creating awareness. There are so many myths surrounding mental health. Myth busting, bias busting are all ways of which the recruiters should be trained on to make sure that they select the right candidate and for the right reasons. Thank you.
Moving on to the next question from Shivang Sharma, who asks, how can an HR manager overcome the challenge of accommodating employees having mental health issues for their performance reviews, considering the fact that mental health is difficult to quantify when compared to a physical problem?
Thank you, Shivang. Shivang, this is it's again, unless there is a specific situation, it's a difficult one to answer, but I will attempt it. I think, firstly, if any problem is medically treated, it's as quantifiable or non-quantifiable as what you would say. If somebody's got a viral fever and they're out of office for a few weeks, then you understand that very easily and it's quantifiable. A supporting work environment. So I would say it's not the problem, it's just the HR manager to solve. It's the leadership, it's the organization culture, and it's all of us in this together, because today it is the one person suffering from mental health issues. Tomorrow it could be any of the others. So coaching the leaders on mental health issues is very, very important. And providing that right support. A person with mental health and with the right treatment and medicine are absolutely same as anybody else who can be productive, and or even more so, with the right treatment. And any health ailment, the way you would treat any other health ailment is the way I would suggest that a mental health issue should be dealt with. And the same impact on productivity. I hope that answers your question.
Moving on, the next question is from Anushka Srivastava. How does one keep up with his or her own mental well-being without getting affected by a person who's already depressed or facing any other mental issue?
Anushka, that's a fantastic question. Thank you so much for asking. I did touch upon this during the thing. First, wear your own oxygen mask. That's something I would always advise to anybody. A person, if you are a caregiver of a person who has got mental health issues, I think the first thing is to wear your own oxygen mask. And somebody who is suffering from mental well-being issues needs professional treatment. Just like we cannot always cure somebody with a physical ailment at home, it's like the example I gave. If I have a broken leg, you cannot cure me at home. You will need medical support. That's the same thing with mental health. So that's an unnatural burden to take on yourself. If somebody is suffering from a mental health issue, is depressed, or facing any mental health issues, please reach out to a good mental health specialist who can give the right advice. And in every situation, every caregiver, and that's generic in this world, should always first wear the oxygen mask on themselves. So drawing boundaries is very, very essential. And maybe if one has a situation like this, then reaching out to say, support structure yourself, like at Google, we have the employee assistance program. That's a perfect example of a situation where you reach out and say, I have a family member who's suffering from this, but because of the extra burden that this puts on me, what do I do? And that's the right place for getting that advice. Thank you, Anushka.
All right, moving on, Ashutosh asks, how can HR help in reducing the stigma around mental health when it is the line managers who are at the front line dealing with such employees?
Thank you, Ashutosh. Ashutosh, HR's role is a force multiplier. So if we become the voice of anything that's stigmatic and we get the buy-in of the senior leadership, then down the line this will change. I think just talking about something again and again repeatedly and opening it up. I feel that mental health is such a taboo, but every single time I speak about it, I get a lot of support, a lot of people actually opening up. Post session, people will reach out and start talking about it. Because it is so common, the taboo is really at the surface. You break the surface a little bit, more people will open up and start talking, and then you realize that you'll have many more allies. So speak about it, talk about it, encourage your senior leaders to speak about their own vulnerabilities and their own experiences. You'll be surprised at the number of people who are willing to speak up, and the stigma then gets broken.
The next question is from Devdatta Gupta. She asks, what are the ways through which learning and development in an organization can play an important role in promoting health and workplace wellness?
I'm just absolutely loving the question. Thank you so much, Devdatta. This was a point in the speech, and I had removed it because there were just too many points. I think having trainings around mental health awareness for managers is such an important aspect of ensuring the right culture. Because we're not experts on mental health. We are not psychiatrists or psychotherapists. None of us understand it like that. But as managers, we are the first point of escalation when something is not seeming right. And if our managers are trained on mental health and on dealing with situations like this and on understanding the triggers, then that's the role that learning and development can definitely play in creating the right modules and ensuring that all people managers are not only well educated but also aware they're refreshers on this topic.
Jitin asks, how much has the well-being program affected the culture at Google ever since it's been introduced?
Okay, Jitin. How do I respond to the? I don't think I have a measure from which I can immediately respond to, and I'm just trying to think. See, the well-being program of Google are almost as old as Google itself, and one of the things at Google that we do is we listen in to employees. So whatever is relevant to the employees is what is then and we are a very statistics-driven company. So things that we hear back from our employees and we are able to provide solutions for those is what we do. So the well-being program is really very old at Google, as old as Google, which is close to 2 decades, or a little over 2 decades now. And the culture of Google is one of psychological safety. Google remains one of the most aspirational organizations to work for, and and it gets measured in the productivity of the employees. It gets measured in the way we are interacting with each other, and those are some of the measures that do happen. And I'm not sure if I've answered your question, Jitin, but if you have a follow-up question, please feel free to drop me a mail.
All right, moving on. The next question is from Venupriya. She says, while we devise these employee support programs for mental health, what are the key factors to take into consideration? And how does one measure the effectiveness of these in the work from home setting?
Thank you, Venu. So the considerations for employee assistance or employee support programs, as I said again, is the voice of employee. So listening into employees and listening into experts who say that in a pandemic situation, mental health will be the next pandemic probably. So how do we gear up as an organization is very important. The measurement of effectiveness of this is, of course, the uptake. I think the usage of any program is a very good measure. We also have things like pulse surveys that come in, and when people share their feedback, managers are listening in a lot to employees, and that gets fed back into the system on how we are, how we are faring on this. We have an annual survey, which is like an employee engagement survey. We also get feedback within those programs on how we are faring overall. The employee assistance program per se may not be a question there, but overall how we are doing in looking after the well-being of our employees.
The next question is from Manu Singh. That's also something around culture. She asks, beyond employee wellness programs, how can business leaders ensure that they create a culture of wellness in the workplace, which is now more hybrid than physical?
Thank you, Anu. I think it all begins with intent, doesn't it? If a business leader from their heart feels connected with their employees, especially in this situation, the the right start would have already been made. And so start with intent for business leaders. Again, a simple leadership mantra is do unto others as you would expect to be done yourself. So the way you expect your leader to be with you, maybe looking at your teams like that would be the first. But at a more practical level, being more mindful of reaching out and asking questions on how people are doing, creating psychological safety in sharing vulnerability. So, hence, showing vulnerability yourself, talking about setting the boundaries that you would like to set. For instance, I shared that, saying that I'm taking a wellness week off because I need some time off, or simply saying that I'm not going to be available after 6 o'clock. And these are examples. They could be different things that work for different people. Or saying that, well, I'm taking in the afternoon, and we've had leaders in the beginning of the lockdown talking about this. In the afternoon, for 2 hours, I'm not available for meetings because in those 2 hours, I'm expected to prepare lunch, feed my family, and then do the dishes. And these are really senior leaders talking like this. I think creating that culture of safety, of being real about and not just bringing a pot of sauna, really promotes a culture of well-being and wellness.
The next question is from Ganesh. It usually takes a long period to recover from mental illness. What can a company do to handle the drop in productivity for an extended period?
So Ganesh, I would first start by saying that it may or may not take time to take a long time to recover from mental illness. I think this is exactly the kind of bias that does surround mental illness. Uh, if, like any other illness or health related issues, if captured at the right time, the path to recovery could be a lot faster and with the right support. So I would say that instead of reacting to the mental illness, building the right culture upfront helps in making sure that problems are identified upfront and they are treated like any other health issues. So I would say that a company should do the same to address a drop in productivity due to mental health that they do for any other sort of illness. So let's not look at it as something unusual or different that's happened. It's the same type of illness that can happen with somebody who falls sick for any number of reasons.
The next question is from Abhishek, who asks, what are the various steps undertaken by Google India to promote the mental well-being of employees during the current COVID scenario?
So Abhishek, this was exactly what my speech was on, but very quickly I will kind of do a quick refresher. We have a Blue Dot program, we have employee assistance program, we have updated our policies to include 14 weeks of carers leave after listening into our employees. We have things like no meeting days, no meeting weeks for teams. We also have we've given global days off for employees because there's been so much of overwhelming this thing. We are doing trainings for our leaders, our managers, so they can identify and address mental health issues. And we try and create a culture of openness and safety around speaking about mental well-being, especially during COVID. crisis. And we have seen this COVID crisis as the silver lining of this situation is that we can now talk about mental health a lot more openly than earlier.
The next question is from Paul. He says, it is evident that there are various degrees of mental health issues, but due to the digital nature of things, how do we ensure that the connect we have isn't superficial, since it does look so virtually from the corporate perspective?
I think that's a genuine challenge, Paul, and that's something that we struggle with all the time. And that's why I think one has to be a lot more mindful. So when I speak with you, I will not just say, Paul, how are you? I think the questions can be a little bit more meaningful, a little bit more deeper. If we know something about each other, we could ask about how are things at home. If you know somebody has a family member who's, say, suffering from, say, COVID, you can ask a little bit about that. Just showing a genuine interest in people and not just beyond a very, superficial hello is what's important. And also recognizing that the need changes. So my need for flexibility today may be different from what it will be 2 months down the line. I think those are the points that help in making sure it's not superficial. But yes, one has to be extremely mindful, and it's a real challenge.
The next question is from Akanksha. It's kind of a follow-up to a previous question. As mental health takes up years to get in control, and during the COVID scenario, the cases have increased, what will be the strategies by HR considering post-COVID scenario and wellness programs?
Okay, I'm going to read the question again. As mental health takes up years to get in control, and during the COVID crisis scenario, the cases have increased, what will be the strategies for HR considering post-COVID scenario and wellness program? I think the post-COVID scenario will have to continue looking at mental health. Firstly, again, I would like to reiterate that mental health will take years to recover at an individual level. It will take as much time or as little time as any other illness. I don't think the range varies dramatically more. Any health issue, and I'm not a doctor, but any health issue will take more time if diagnosed later. I think sooner, and the less bias there is, the more openly people will seek support in the first instance, and the better and faster the cure will be. But the world has changed, in my view, dramatically because of COVID, and I think the awareness of mental health issues has become a lot more, and as a result of that, it is the onus is now on us and on this generation and all of you who are future leaders to make sure we don't lose the momentum on mental health, and that these strategies and the benefits that are there continue across even post-COVID.
Ma'am, the next question is from Akshita, who asks, how mental health condition at Google in the past few how has mental health condition at Google in the past few years due to increasing use of social media, and how is it affecting employees and their efficiency?
So Akshita, this question is, I think, like I said, we, along with many other employers, realized that with the pandemic and the changed scenario of the lockdown across the globe, mental health will become one of the biggest challenges. And as a result of that, we brought in a slew of measures and increased some of the things we were already doing. Like Blue Dot program was already in existence. We just make sure that there's more awareness around it, and more connect. And for managers, there's more training. So making sure that all of that what we were doing was increased as far as mental health is concerned, and also at the same time things that are we increased some things, like for instance the 14 days of leave, 14 weeks of leave, 14 weeks of paid leave for carer leave. And I think those are some of the things. So and we are constantly evolving. I'm not saying we have it all, we have solved for everything, but we are trying to resolve for this, and we do check in with employees through our manager circles, through our at the leadership engagement forums and through our employee engagement surveys to understand how employees are feeling and doing constantly and what changes are needed.
Wanted to take a time check, ma'am.
We have 5 more minutes, so I think I'm happy to take maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
All right. The next question is from Ishan. He says, as we shift towards a model of work-life integration, how can one ensure the mental well-being of employees rather than creating a situation where the stress levels increase due to the lack of clear boundaries?
Thank you, Ishan. I wish every leader asked themselves this question across all of this world, and then maybe this problem would be a lot lesser. But I think this is a question that we start with ourselves. How do we increase our own mental well-being before creating a situation of stress? I think understanding triggers of stress for each individual, and they may vary for all of us, is very, very important. Making sure as a leader, and I shared some of the tips in the speech earlier, to create that situation where people feel safe and in seeking support when they feel challenged, sharing your own vulnerability, setting your own boundary, wearing the oxygen mask yourself, are good tips to make sure that people are they are taking the right measures to not increase the stress levels which are already very high globally.
The next question is from Madhushri Prakash. She says, some employees are more comfortable and open to using technology like AI for mental health support versus manager interventions. What is your opinion about this, and how can employers use AI to help employees grapple with mental health while respecting the privacy concerns and anonymity?
So again, and I'm speaking this more generically, I think again every individual is more comfortable with different types of interventions. Uh, there are tools available out there which use AI, and there are obviously manager and human interventions. I think it's a choice that the individual should exercise, and organizations can choose to give both options. Having said that, like with any other physical or any other ailment, any other health issue, at some point in time, having a professional and not AI look at it is the right solution. So I think that it really depends on a case to case basis of whether you want to go through AI or through an actual medical expert.
Ma'am, would you like to take another question, or?
I think we have time for another question, so I'm happy to take that.
All right. The next question is from Kirtana. She says, mental health is often a topic that's considered taboo. Is there anything in particular that seems to encourage and support those who wish to talk freely about mental health and get help at the workplace?
I think leaders who talk openly about mental health, leaders who show their own vulnerability, who will stand up and say, well, either about themselves, I suffered from something, or talk about somebody that they have known. Sharing your own stories is one of the most powerful tools, I feel, to speak about mental health.
All right. I guess Saksham's here. So.
Hi, Saksham.
Hello, ma'am, and thank you for your address on the topic around mental health. Breaking the myths associated with mental health really gave us a new perspective. You were absolutely right in saying that the pandemic has affected all of us, both at a personal and a professional level, and that it is okay to talk about it. We need to break the taboos around mental health in order to rightly address it. There is also additional focus on mental well-being by leading organizations such as Google, and hopefully that is here to stay. We are sure that the audience had many key takeaways from this address. We once again thank you for taking out your valuable time to join us for the HR Conclave and adding to the learning quotient. I request all the attendees to now hold on and take a break in the social lounge as we prepare for the next session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me over. Wish you all the best. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.